Welcome to American Players Theater Talkbacks to Go. I'm Buzz Kemper, and I invite you to take a walk up the hill with Orange Schroeder and me as Orange talks with director Eric Tucker and actor Cristina Panfilio about APT's 2017 production of Pericles, Prince of Tyre by William Shakespeare.
We're going to be discussing Shakespeare's play Pericles, Prince of Tyre, and I have with me director Eric Tucker, who is a first-time director at APT, and Cristina Panfilio, who plays not one but many roles in this play. I wanted to start out by mentioning that APT did the play in 1999, I believe, but it hasn't been done very frequently anywhere. But I've noticed that recently the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, the Guthrie, Shakespeare in the Park, and Shakespeare's Globe have performed Pericles. Why do you think that is?
Well, in Shakespeare's time, it was one of his most successful plays. I think it's a real crowd pleaser, and I think some artistic directors obviously figured that out. I think even many mediocre productions end up doing really well with an audience because it's kind of a great adventure story. And I think it's a bit of a hidden gem. People don't know this play as well as they know others. And also I think places like OSF, these Shakespeare companies, they have to sort of revolve through the canon. And it was its time, I think, in some of those places. The OSF version went to the Guthrie. That was the same production, and then it went to the Folger, and I think it did really well because it was a really beautiful production. I didn't get to see it, but I think it's just it's actually a really good play. It's solid, don't you think?
I totally agree. And I think it doesn't hurt that it requires a certain level of invention. It's big, and it's big. And now a lot of theaters have a lot of newer resources in terms of storytelling, either more costume stuff available or projections or set pieces, or we can sort of be more inventive in terms of the way we tell a story. So I think there's something appealing about that as well.
And it sounds like inventive storytelling is part of bringing this play to life. Can you talk a little bit about the sets and costumes?
Yeah, I think one of the ways in which we're sort of tapping into our inventiveness is that it's a reduced cast. In other words, there aren't enough actors to cover every role. So you have 9 actors who have to play several roles and be lots of things. And in our production, they also sort of serve to help move the story along with the costumes and set pieces and things like that. So at times I think it might look, I'm just guessing because we're only in the first week of rehearsal. So this is what I have planned, but it doesn't always happen that way. But it'll have at some points a backstage feel, the way we're putting the play on, so that you see the mechanics of how we're telling the story. Or I guess in other words, we're not going to try to hide the fact that we're a bunch of storytellers or an ensemble coming together and telling the story. And when you were saying it's big, it's epic. It goes to a lot of places. There are a bunch of different countries, worlds, places. So we've tried to design it so that each of those is really starkly different from the other, so that it might feel like you've actually walked into a completely different play, or onto the set of another play when the world changes. I don't know if we'll achieve that. That's what we have set out to do, but it might be more subtle than that. But that's the idea right now behind the costumes and the set pieces and how we're trying to. It's almost like the idea that you're looking at a movie set and you're seeing kind of the bones of that and watching us switch things up to show you a different image, I suppose, or a backdrop for that particular scene.
Can you give us an example of what some of the different settings and time will be?
Well, for example, Pericles' court, which is Tyre, we decided, because that's sort of our home base, we decided to make that very much an Elizabethan court. And then later when he goes to Tarsus, when he first arrives, is a country that's going through a famine. A lot of their people are dying. They've lost they used to be a very wealthy country, and they've lost everything. So we decided to make that Dust Bowl America. So you can see already we're not concerned with time. We're trying to show that we're pulling whatever we feel we need to tell the story best, wherever that is and whatever time that's from. We're not, I don't think, trying to tell the story that Pericles is a time traveler as much as we're just saying the story's timeless and trying to help the audience key in as fast as they can to each one of these places.
And Cristina, you play obviously different roles in different times and different places. What's that like for you as an actor?
I'm actually sort of focused on one character that shows up a little bit later. So I don't have quite the load that some of the other actors have. We're all currently, and I mean, who knows what we'll come up with on the day, but currently we're all sharing the Gower, the sort of Gower line. But I have played a bunch of characters at the same time before, and I'm watching other people work their way through it, and it is a huge challenge, but also a huge gift. You're sort of required to make everything really clear. There's no space for, I would say that about this whole production, there's really no space for gray area. You have to make really clear, strong choices, or the audience will get confused, and you won't tell an effective story. So it's kind of a gift to have to say, well, these two people they can't be the same. So how are they different? And how do we tell that story? And how does this character serve this world? And how does this other character serve this other world? And, how do we, it's just all good storytelling. It's a great challenge, but it's also kind of a trick.
Does costume help with those transitions? I mean, when someone goes from one time period to another, there'll be a different character and also a different costume.
Yeah, the design is completely, each place that Pericles travels through is a completely different time and place, really.
I think why I said it might end up being sort of subtle in some ways is because when I gave that example earlier of us going to Dust Bowl America, not the entire ensemble won't suddenly change costumes. So what it is a lot of times with this kind of a production, what you'll see is that the costume designer gives all of the actors a base costume that's very sort of neutral. Everybody kind of looks like they're in the same place, and then they'll add and take away things, funny hats and glasses and skirts and jackets and whatever to accent whatever you need, right? We decided not to do that. We wanted everybody on purpose to sort of look like they came off of a different movie set or something. When you see the back of a movie set and you see like a bunch of, knights walking through it, that look like they came from a medieval set, and then some showgirls that look like they walked off out of Vegas or something. That was the idea, so that there are a couple people whose base costume is very particularly each one of these worlds. So there might be two actors that look like they're right out of Dust Bowl, that era of America. And so when we focus on that part of the story, they're the focus, and everybody else is sort of like the stagehand helping make that world come into focus. And then when we move to the Elizabethan court, then there are a couple other actors who kind of look like that's their set. Do you know what I mean? And we kind of keep focusing on. So, but most certainly, however you do it, costumes are obviously a really effective way of giving the audience what they need, But I think what we're aiming for is that these actors, I mean, it's a really talented room full of actors. Christina does not agree. I'm kidding. She's just staring at me blankly. You can
I'm
cut
just
that.
listening.
She
just
thinks
Tell me
modest.
more
some
about
of
how good
them
the
She's being
actors
modest.
are.
Yeah. Well, Christina's amazing, and the others are pretty good. But they. So I want to also focus on letting the actors show us as much as they can without a lot of help. You know, it's kind of, I think it's really satisfying for an audience to watch a group of actors who can transform before their eyes. You know, I love that. And then it can also happen much quicker, and the play doesn't have to be 3 hours long.
I would also say it's such a special and unusual story that you don't get to see a lot, that people are not very familiar with. And we're building this thing as an ensemble. And I'm not talking about the actors. It is a room full of tenacious, hungry, smart, fun artists. Everyone in the room. And I mean, everyone is excited to contribute in terms of design and storytelling. And that's a really cool way to build a play, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I know that it's been said that there's some question as to whether Shakespeare wrote the entire play, and also the unusual use of John Gower to introduce each act with a prologue is not something that Shakespeare often does. Do you want to speak to either of those?
Well, you know, the question of authorship, of course, can be a hot topic, right? I mean, I think that with this play in particular, it's not a far stretch. It's not a stretch at all to imagine that Shakespeare would have collaborated with other writers on a play. Writers in his era did that all the time. What's a little remarkable is that Wilkins, who they think wrote this with him, didn't have a lot of work under his belt when he was collaborating with Shakespeare, and he was younger. He probably came to Shakespeare with this idea. What's interesting about it is there are a lot of parallels to Comedy of Errors and obviously then the plays he wrote after Pericles. But so clearly Shakespeare had a hand in this play. You see it, especially in the second half. I mean, there's some absolutely beautiful, beautiful text. But I think it's pretty plain to see that it's not all his. The Gower stuff is strikingly not like Shakespeare. It's kind of simple, a little clumsy at times. But it's definitely a Shakespeare play. And so if he collaborated with someone, yes, he probably did. And thank goodness he did, or it wouldn't be as good of a play.
Yeah. You need that Gower stuff too, because again, being such a huge, huge play and crossing over so much time and space.
Absolutely.
Without you need somebody to help move this thing along.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you have to have, I think every scene would begin with, "Hey, Pericles, what's up? Oh, nothing, just crashed my boat."
Just crashed your Pentabulus.
"Hey, where am I?"
Right.
Yeah. "Oh, this is," we would get tired of that. So we just need like a little bit of help, I think.
Yeah. And then we're plunged right into the scene. It's
Yeah.
more like a really great action story where you sort of catch up and then you're right in. It's really good.
And this is your first time directing on the APT stage, Eric. What do you think?
Well, so far, I love it. I mean, Brenda DeVita brought me out here a couple summers ago to look around, see some plays, meet people, and I really fell in love with it. I thought, wow, this really is a magical place. That's what Brenda does. She gets you here, and then you don't want to go. You want to keep coming here and playing. So I love it. It's everything that Cristina just said about this group that I'm working with is true. They're really inspiring and fun.
And it sounds like you're just the person to bring them together to make Pericles come alive on stage. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Talkbacks to Go is a production of Orange Tree Imports and Audio for the Arts. Our theme music is by Steve Tibbetts, and it appears here by permission of the artist, courtesy of ECM Records. Please find us on iTunes and YouTube under APT Talkbacks to Go. With Orange Schroeder, I'm Buzz Kemper. Thank you for listening.